Lee Oswald with regard to some legal problems he had with his wife, Marina, and we found that a man who used the name Clay Bertrand was making the payments.
Informants told Garrison Clay Bertrand was also seen at the offices of Guy Bannister, along with Oswald and Ferry. Having established Ferry had lied about knowing Oswald and ice skating in Houston, Garrison officially but secretly opened his investigation.
We started digging into Oswald's background, his acquaintances, found he was being used and manipulated for some reason, dug back into those witnesses, and ultimately found ourselves dancing with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Jim went into what I call a tirade about the CIA, our CIA killing our president. And I had heard this so many times, and I was tired from my trip to Houston, and I really didn't know anything else to say, and I wanted to go home, and I just said in a down way, I said, Jim, if the CIA killed the president, there's nothing a chicken shit assistant DA from New Orleans is going to be able to do about it. And sort of resigned that I was probably going to get fired for that comment. And he started laughing in his wonderful laugh, and then looked at me and said, there's probably nothing a chicken shit DA is going to be able to do about it either. And he started laughing in his wonderful laugh, and then looked at me and said, there's probably nothing a chicken shit DA is going to be able to do about it either.
I thought, like most investigation, within a couple of months, it would come to a conclusion. I never figured it would mushroom the way it did.
On the trail of Clay Bertrand, Garrison found witnesses who said he matched the description of Clay Shaw. Clay Shaw was president of the International Trade Mart and one of New Orleans' most prominent citizens. With evidence that Oswald and Ferry were associates and that Shaw might be the mysterious Clay Bertrand, Garrison was about to step up his investigation when the story unexpectedly broke on February 17, 1967.
There is no question in my mind, but what there will be in time, arrests of individuals following our investigation. And there is no question in my mind, but what in time to come there will be charges and there will be convictions based on the charges.
David Ferry called the press to confirm that Garrison had been questioning him. He then called Lou Ivan.
Dave called my house, and my wife answered the phone and wanted to talk to me. And he's highly excited. He's got on the phone with him, and he's scared for his life.
I told them about a summer of '63 that I had gone up to Dave Ferry's apartment, which was Louisiana.
Seeing the stories about Ferry and an assassination plot, a young insurance salesman who was to become Garrison's key witness stepped forward, Perry Russo.
Ferry was in control of the gathering, and he was in one of his obsessive evenings concerning his hatred of the President of the United States.
Russo told Garrison he'd overheard Ferry, Oswald, some Cubans, and Clay Bertrand discussing a plot to kill Kennedy in Crossfire. Russo said he came forward because he'd only been there by chance and didn't want to be accidentally implicated in Garrison's investigation. Russo subsequently picked out a picture of Clay Bertrand. It was Clay Shaw.
Shaw was introduced to me as Bertrand.
Within a week of the first story, Garrison's office got its last frantic phone call from David Ferry.
So Dave, just hold still. I'll be right over. We got a hold of Jim, and we made arrangements to put him in the old Fontainebleau.
Lou Ivan stayed with Ferry at the Fontainebleau till early morning. Ferry confided to him that he, Oswald, Bannister, and Clay Shaw were all CIA. Lou left Ferry about 4 o'clock in the morning.
And then, of course, the next thing we found, we got a call that he was dead in his apartment on Louisiana Avenue.
It reads as follows: to leave this life is for me a sweet prospect.
Ferry left typed suicide notes. With Ferry's death, Garrison felt he had to move quickly to arrest Shaw, otherwise he might find more typed suicide notes. On March 1st, 1967, Clay Shaw was taken into custody for conspiracy to murder President John F. Kennedy.
There were marble statues of penises on his dresser. There were whips and chains in his closet, and there were hooks and beams with handprints next to them. And there were also leather straps in his bedroom that could very conceivably be used to tie a person's hands to those hooks. What they were looking for was any documents that would link these parties together.
In Shaw's phone book, Garrison found a Texas post office box number that corresponded to one in Oswald's phone book. When Clay Shaw was booked on March 1st, 1967, no one outside of Garrison's office knew they were also looking for Clay Bertrand.
Never released to the public. Nobody knew that, and no police officer knew about a Clay Bertrand.
Lou Ivan said that when Clay Shaw was booked and fingerprinted, the booking officer, Aloysius Haberhorst, asked Clay Shaw as a matter of routine procedure if he used any aliases. Clay Shaw said yes, Clay Bertrand.
Shaw was one of the secret supervisors of Oswald.
Garrison said Shaw was helping to create an identity for Oswald, who would then become the perfect patsy.
Not only did we not have the cooperation of the federal government, but in fact, they were the enemy. And we had 12 assistant DAs, I believe, and maybe about 10 investigators. No agency, law enforcement agency was cooperating with us, even our own police department.
He called me and said, you know about my situation, you know what I'm doing down here? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, would you come down and just take a look at us, at what we're doing down here? And I said, sure. And I had a 1-year lease for this place at Stanford University. I canceled it in 15 minutes.
Under Louisiana law, Jim Garrison could have indicted Shaw himself, but to assure the public he was protecting Clay Shaw's rights and his own office's procedures in case of appeal, Garrison brought Shaw before a grand jury. The grand jury heard the evidence and moved to indict.
He went through a grand jury, but I have to say it was a grand jury that he had in his pocket.
To further test his case and further protect Clay Shaw's rights, Jim Garrison then asked for a preliminary hearing before a 3-judge panel. Shaw's defense tried to introduce the Warren Report as evidence. The judges refused, ruling the Warren Report hearsay.
Well, I'm the lawyer who tried to introduce it, and that is accurate.
Getting the indictment against Clay Shaw came quickly. Getting Clay Shaw to trial would take 2 years.
The news media's reaction to Garrison, I attributed to their feelings towards Shaw initially. But then it became directed in a very bitter fashion towards Garrison, as though there was something sinister about Jim Garrison, something dangerously sinister.
If they think our efforts to objectify our witness are something sinister, well, we just don't have time to fool with it. So we give lie detectors now to witnesses we think are lying.
From Washington came a surprising announcement from Attorney General Ramsey Clark, stating that Clay Shaw had already been cleared by the Justice Department of any involvement in the assassination. Since Shaw's name had not appeared in the Warren Report, some reporters asked why Shaw was investigated in the first place. An aide to Ramsey Clark said the Attorney General had been in error.
They had substantial data by that time because we had. Clay Shaw, for example, had been with the Central Intelligence Agency ever since he was with the Mississippi River Shipping Company.
Prior to the Shaw trial, Garrison got a boost in his case when attorney Dean Andrews was convicted of perjury for lying to a grand jury when he said Clay Shaw was not Clay Bertrand.
And that was a very important conviction, but that's never mentioned.
We got no help from the FBI or any records that we were trying to get, investigative records, which ordinarily we would have gotten. Got no help at all.
Garrison would have gladly stepped back and turned everything he had, including manpower, over to any legitimate federal authority that wanted to continue that investigation.
Declassified FBI documents reveal that Bill Alford was right. Columnist Jack Anderson, acting as a hostile liaison for the agency, came away from New Orleans convinced Garrison had a case, one which Garrison offered to the agency. The FBI declined. Columnist Jack Anderson, acting as a hostile liaison for the agency, came away from New Orleans convinced Garrison had a case, one which Garrison offered to the agency. The FBI declined.
In the preparation for the trial of Clay Shaw by the district attorney's office was the feeling in the district attorney's office that the case would never get to trial anyway.
Either because of his death or for some other reason.
We had two men assigned to Jim around the clock when all these threats were coming, from morning till night.
We were a close family, and my mother made sure that even though they had policemen and they would bring us to school